People's Kid, how we doing? Back at you with another live stream. Today, we have a lot to talk about as it's Saturday, it's May, a lot of sports stuff to get to. I want to start out like we do each week with the NBA. We have now reached the conference semifinals for both leagues, both conferences. We have the Washington Wizards and Boston Celtics playing against each other in what has been so far a very good series, probably the most competitive series by far. We have the Cavs dominating the Raptors, which is no surprise. They're up 3-0. We have the Spurs and Rockets going back and forth. The Spurs lead that series 2-1. And we have the Warriors up 2-0 playing tonight in Utah. Before I get into the series, I want to talk about the best players in the playoffs. So last week I did a list, and in my list, the rule is you have to still be in the playoffs. So now I want to make that list again. Last week at number 1 I had LeBron. This week at number 1 obviously is LeBron. Last week at number 2 I had Chris Paul. He has now been eliminated from the playoffs, so he's no longer eligible to be in this list. So I'm moving Kawhi Leonard up to number 2. Kawhi Leonard's been fantastic. We'll get into him in just a little bit. Number 3, I'm elevating Draymond Green. Now, I know the numbers aren't great. They're not like LeBron's or Kawhi's or John Wall's or Isaiah Thomas's or James Harden. But if you really watch the Warriors like I've been watching him, he's actually been their best player so far in the playoffs, and they haven't lost a playoff game. So you have to give him credit for that. He's averaging about 18 and 19 points. He's shooting an astonishing 60% from 3, which obviously won't last, but it's still pretty incredible that he's doing that. So he deserves a lot of credit. You know, you hear about Curry, you hear about Durant, you hear about Clay, and Draymond obviously gets a lot of credit for his defense, but really offensively he's been just as good as he's been defensively, and he's been the engine that's made that team go. So I have him number 3. Number 4, I have Isaiah Thomas of the Celtics, obviously. Scoring 53 points in Game 2 against the Wizards to give them a commanding 2-0 lead. They now lead 2-1. He's playing obviously through tragedy with his sister passing away recently. He's got banged up. He's had his tooth fallen out. All that stuff, puts him on that list. He's been really good and deserves to be on that list. I just think he's been a little bit better than John Wall in that series so far, and that's why they lead the series 2-1. And then number 5, I'll put James Harden. I mean, James Harden has been good, but not as good as he's been in the regular season. He's been good. He had a big game last night. He had 43 points, but that's because the Spurs kind of let him and wanted him to score instead of being a facilitator. So he's been really good, but he hasn't been a top 2 player in the league like he's been in the regular season. He hasn't been where he's been in the regular season. The Spurs have defended him well. The Thunder at times defended him well. He's a lot more reliant on his teammates than he was in the regular season. So that's why I have him at number 5. But the thing I want to talk about in terms of the NBA playoffs is this LeBron Kawhi thing that's kind of been getting started that I've been seeing on Twitter, and it's making me sick. LeBron, if you don't know, is playing the best basketball of his entire career. He's averaging about 34.3 points, 9 boards, 7 assists right now in the playoffs, shooting a ridiculous percentage. And he's playing as well as he's played throughout his entire career, really. And Kawhi Leonard's playing really well too, especially now with Tony Parker being injured. He has really stepped up, and he's taken on a lot of the ball handling duties. He is distributing, but to say that there's a lot of people out there, Skip Bayless, one of them, that think that because he plays great defense, he's a better overall two-way player than LeBron's ludicrous. There's nobody that can impact a game on both sides of the floor like LeBron, and LeBron is showing that. It just amazes me because I would understand that type of question if LeBron were having maybe a down postseason. He's having the best postseason of his entire career. And if it's the best postseason of his entire career, it's the best postseason pretty much of anybody's entire career. So there's no way you could possibly make the argument by saying that Kawhi Leonard is better than him or is as good as him. I'm a fan of Kawhi Leonard. I'm rooting for them to beat the Rockets. I love what he's doing, and he deserves a lot of credit for it. And he's done a pretty good job on James Harden too, but he's not LeBron. It's not even close. So let's just get that out there. Let's forget that. like I said, the best players in the playoffs so far. LeBron 1, Kawhi 2. He deserves that. You could even make the case that he might be the second best overall player in the NBA, but I still think a healthy Kevin Durant is better than a Kawhi Leonard. But that's just my opinion. But Kawhi deserves a lot of credit, but let's not get crazy. Let's not lose our heads. Going forward, I think eventually the Celtics will move on from Washington. I think it'll be about a 7-game series. Obviously, the Cavs series is as good as over. Obviously, the Warriors will take care of Utah. And the series that's really tough to call is the Spurs. I was one that thought after Game 1, everybody overreacted, saying, I saw Colin Cowherd say, it's the end of an era. It's the end of an era. The Spurs are done. The Spurs are done. I was like, it's one game. Let's not get crazy. It's literally one game. They've come back. They've won 2 in a row. They won in the Rockets building last night. So I think, it'd be chalky to say, but I still think the Spurs find a way to win that series, probably in 7 games. So we'll see what happens. The NBA playoffs has been as good as advertised. The players have been really good. I'm interested to see how the Warriors look tonight on the road. You always think those Game 3s for the Warriors or Cavs are where they're the most susceptible, the most vulnerable. So we'll see how the Warriors look tonight. But it's been a really good playoffs so far, led by LeBron. And, don't forget that. Transitioning, I want to talk about soccer. I always start with the NBA, and then I move into soccer. And a bit of a bitterness of me today. Barcelona, my team, if you're just tuning in, you're new to the stream. Barcelona's my team. They did win today, and they still are alive in La Liga, as Real Madrid won 4-0 against one of the worst teams in the league today. So they're still, they still control their own destiny because they're tied on points, but Real Madrid is a game in hand. But it's time to give some credit where credit's due, and that's to one Cristiano Ronaldo. Probably one of his biggest critics. Over the course of the last 2 years, I've criticized him for padding his stats against bad teams, and this year he's done the exact opposite. He has now been rested 6 of the last 7 La Liga road games against teams that Real Madrid didn't think they needed him to win. He's been fresh for the Champions League, and he's scored 8 goals in the last 3 games for Real Madrid in the Champions League knockout stages against Bayern Munich twice and against Atletico Madrid, and that's really hard to do. Lionel Messi's never done that. That's really hard to do. Obviously, the cynic in me, the bitterness in me, the Barcelona fan, the Messi fan in me could say, he's, a lot of those goals probably were offsides. Out of the 8 goals that he scored, maybe 1 or 2 of them were really good goals, but you can't say that. Goals are what matter in soccer when it comes down to it, and he has scored 8 goals in 3 games against 2 of the best clubs in the world. He deserves a lot of credit for that, and if Real Madrid do go on and become the first team to ever repeat as Champions League champions and win La Liga, it'll be hard to deny him another Ballon d'Or, which would tie him with Messi, even though overall Messi's had a significantly better season, probably a bigger gap now than there's ever been. But it just shows you in soccer or in any sport, it's really just as much as it is about consistency and day in and day out production, it's really about the moments, because Ronaldo's had the bigger moments in the bigger games. Messi had his Clasico moment, but that probably is going to be deemed insignificant if Real Madrid go out and win out the rest of the league. So even though, like I said, Messi's outscored him, he's been better overall, and anyone that's watched them all year would say that, but unfortunately for me at least, and if you're a Messi fan or a Barcelona fan, Ronaldo's been better when it matters the most, and he deserves credit for that. You just can't take that away from him at this point. Ronaldo has transitioned as a player. Like I said, he is not the day-in, day-out machine that he was a few years ago, but what he has done is he has created himself into this number 9, the striker, where he doesn't have to really have the ball. He doesn't really have to be great. He doesn't really have to dominate games, but he just needs to be ready for those chances, those headers, those balls that fall to him. And when he does get those, he's been taking them. And he's created those moments, and he's been fantastic. And he deserves a lot of credit for that. Now, like I said, is he better than Messi right now? Of course not. But he deserves his credit, and if they go on and win the Champions League, which I think it would be tough to bet against them, well, what are you going to do? The guy deserves it. He's a really hard worker. He continues to reinvent himself. I always say the sign of a really true great superstar, whether it's in sports or whether it's in music or whether it's in anything, is the ability to change and reinvent yourself and keep yourself relevant. Great artists. The Michael Jacksons of the world did it. The Justin Timberlakes of the world did it. LeBron's done it. Michael Jordan does it. And what I mean by that is, like, for example, Michael Jordan used to be this high flyer. Then when he came back from his retirement the first time, he became a mid-range shooter. He became more of a finesse assassin. LeBron, same type of thing. Really was known for just bulldozing his way. Now he's become a passer, a pass-first player, dominate the games in other ways. Messi, all known for his goal-scoring ability in 2010, 2011, 2012. But in 2015, he reinvented himself, became a pass-first player, became a creator and a distributor out of the midfield. And now Ronaldo's done the same type of thing, known for his speed, known for his athleticism, known for his breakaway acceleration. He doesn't have that anymore. So he's harnessed in on the fundamentals and the finishing part of the game, and he's become the most lethal striker in the world, literally playing a number 9 role and being a penalty box predator. So kudos to him for that. He deserves a lot of credit. A couple more things I want to get into. The rest of the Champions League, Juventus took care of Monaco 2-0 in their away leg. So barring a massive collapse, it'll be Juventus versus Real Madrid in the Champions League final. We'll have plenty of time to preview that game. I think it'll be a good one. And I want to touch on a little baseball. Saturday, about an hour and a half from now, the Cubs will play the Yankees in what obviously a lot of people want to talk about, a World Series preview or whatnot. I always think that's BS because I think the playoffs in baseball are very random. But it is interesting, this Cubs-Yankees series, because the Cubs have all this unbelievable young talent, and they have a World Series under their belt. The Schwarbers, the Russells, the Bryants, the Rizzos, the Hendricks, the Almoras. But you look at this group of young talent for the Yankees. Aaron Judge, who's arguably been the best player in baseball this year. Gary Sanchez, who arguably when he was up was the best player in baseball last year. Didi Gregorius. They've even gotten contributions from guys like Starlin Castro and Chase Headley and Matt Holliday. But you look at their young talent. Greg Bird, who hasn't hit well but probably will. Then they got Gleyber Torres from the Cubs in the Chapman deal. Then they got Chapman back. Boy, Brian Cashman deserves a lot of credit. A lot of credit. When the Cubs were in the rebuilding phase, they had 3 straight years where they were arguably, right there as the worst team in baseball. The Yankees almost made the playoffs last year, traded away a lot of their assets, got back young talent, had been able to rebuild their farm system while being one of the top 10 teams in baseball. It's really hard to do. That's really hard to do. Theo Epstein, as much as he's praised, and rightfully so, he didn't do that. He tore down the Cubs, traded away everything they have, and it took about 3 years to really see this. With the Yankees, who knows? Maybe it's just, a hot start. But to be doing what they're doing with the young talent that they have, and still all the assets and future stars they have in their farm system, and the Fraziers and the Torres and the Mateos, all these guys, it's really impressive. So I just think this series is interesting because it's probably the two teams that are really good right now and 2 teams that will be really good for the next 5 to 6 to 7 years. Eventually, hopefully, as a Cubs fan, it'd be great to have them meet in the World Series. So, we'll see what happens. Any other things I really want to touch on? I talked about the playoffs. I mean, it seems like a surefire Warriors-Cavs finals like we all predicted. I mean, who knows who's going to even lose the first game? Who knows who's going to even lose the first game between those teams in the playoffs? I mean, it looks like the Warriors, if they win tonight, they'll sweep the Jazz. The Cavs got that sweep in the bag already against the Raptors. I think the Cavs will lose at least a game or two to the Wizards or the Celtics, and I think the Warriors would lose a game or two to the Spurs or Rockets. But man, those teams are cruising, and they're on a collision course. And LeBron is playing better basketball now than he did last year at this time, and the Warriors are playing much better basketball now, better now than they did last year at this time. The thing about the Warriors is as great as they were in the regular season last year. They lost a first-round game to the Rockets. They lost a first-round game to the Blazers and really should have lost at least one more of those. And then obviously they were down 3-1 to the Thunder. There's no signs that they're going to lose 2 or 3 games to anybody in the Western Conference. And yes, the Cavs cruised through the first 2 rounds of the East last year and then beat the Raptors in 6. And they're going to do that no matter what because the East is so putrid. But LeBron wasn't at the level that he is. The one thing that the Cavs do need to harness, though, and get figured out, even though it's great that they're winning all these games in the fourth quarter without the contributions of Kyrie and Kevin Love, they need to get Kyrie going because he is key against the Warriors. They cannot beat the Golden State Warriors, let alone compete against the Golden State Warriors if Kyrie Irving isn't in top form, and he isn't in top form right now. So that's something to watch going forward. But otherwise, it's been a collision course and will be until June between the Warriors and Cavs. Hopefully Barcelona can get lucky and Real Madrid can drop points next weekend in La Liga. We will see. The Champions League semifinals are, like I said, they're pretty much done after the first leg results. It'll be Real Madrid and Juventus. Baseball, we got the Cubs-Yankees tonight. I don't know what happened in the Kentucky Derby, and I don't really care. Hope everyone is having a great weekend. It's beautiful outside. Enjoy it. And we'll see you next week.